Hello and welcome to Lexitecture, a podcast about word origins and histories. My name is Ryan, and in each episode my friend Amy and I bring a new pair of words to share their stories with each other and you. You can find our past episodes and the occasional blog post on our website at lexitecture.com. Follow along with us on Twitter and Facebook at Lexitecture, and if you really like what we do, you can support the show at patreon.com/lexitecture.
Today's episode, Grab Bag.
Hi everybody, you're stuck with just me again this time, because Amy and I couldn't get our lives together thanks to, well, I don't know. Let's blame the plague apocalypse, because I feel like that's handy and reasonable. Couldn't get it together to manage to work schedules and stuff, so here I am with you, talking about words. I am wearing a bow tie. I found it in the closet that I record stuff in. I realize it's not a lot of help given this is an audio medium, but maybe picturing me looking vaguely apologetic wearing a bow tie helps. If not, forget I said anything. I thought I would do something a little bit different because we're already doing something different. You've heard us complain every time we do a solo episode about it's just not as much fun, because it's not, and it's, kind of good to have the back and forth that we have. But one of the things that's challenging is finding a word or words to do, because for me at least, the idea is I will find some and it'll be like, oh man, it's sort of too interesting to use as a solo episode, because I feel like there's some good discussion that could come out of this, which is why we do the show normally with two hosts. But the other thing that sometimes happens is, and I'm sure this happens for Amy as well, but I'll be looking into a word that I can do for an upcoming episode, and I'll find something, and it'll have like one kind of thing that goes that I kind of read and go, that's very cool. I like that a lot. But it'll be the only thing kind of interesting or noteworthy about the words. It's not really enough to do as a full my half of the episode. So what I thought I would do, we do have listener suggestions kicking around that we are going to put together in a couple more word extravaganza episodes. But for this one, I thought it would be neat to take this chance to do a bunch of words that have sort of one or two little interesting things that aren't quite enough of a story behind them to do a full episode on, but we could do a little bit of a grab bag episode for this with words that are just kind of, not quite as much as I'd like for a regular one, but still kind of neat. So we'll try that. Before I get started though, I just want to let people know, if you are a recent Patreon sponsor, sign up, glorious person, as all Patreon sponsors are, we haven't forgotten about you. We kind of like to keep the official kind of shout outs of thanks to when it's both of us. But yeah, so we'll get there. We see you. We love you. I'm still working on learning how to pronounce an Icelandic name. And yeah, so if you're one of those people, thanks, and we'll properly shout you out next time. If you're not one of those people, or you have no idea what I'm talking about, patreon.com/Lexitecture is how people can support our show. Hashtag always be plugging. Anyway, moving on. The first word I have to talk about today is vegetable. And this is one of those words that kind of, as soon as I read the thing that I'm going to talk to you about it, I looked at it and went, of course that's what it is or was. But it absolutely never at any point had I even considered this, let alone noticed it. But the earliest form of vegetable was actually as an adjective. And it makes so much sense when you look at it, because it's got that able ending that you find in all kinds of adjectives: marketable, comfortable, probable, flammable. And then there's like the closely related ible ending for loads and loads of other adjectives. But yeah, vegetable, sort of veget, able. It basically originally meant, the first OED definition is just great, as they often are. It's, quote, having the most basic attributes of life, specifically endowed with the power or faculty of growth, as opposed to the powers of sensation, movement, or rational thought. So a lot of the first citations have it in the phrase the vegetable soul, as opposed to the sensible soul. So the vegetable soul is just the imbued life that can grow, but that's about it. But so much of it comes from this sense of just the vivacity and the livingness of it, and that capacity for growth is really kind of interesting. And one of the things I thought about, and it is all, any plant, it wasn't just like vegetables as opposed to fruits. It was just the vegetable kingdom. You know what I mean? So any plants. And what I keep thinking about when I think about this sort of vigorous power of growth type of thing is just how incongruent that is with sort of the more modern kind of attributive, I guess, sense of vegetable, as in just like inert or lacking the capacity for all kinds of things. Because what I think about is, I think about just like the slow, gradual power of growth that is involved in plants of various kinds, just being able to just force their way through almost anything. You see it in trees and little shrubs coming up between interlocking brick, or even just through like a crack in the sidewalk, or, you know, the ancient temples of Angkor Wat when they were first discovered, having been abandoned for centuries in the jungle. Just the trees just grew right up around and in between these massive stones, just shoving them apart. And it's quite cool. So the word vegetable comes from French, and it's partly also a borrowing from Latin, and ultimately from vegere, meaning to be lively, and a PIE root, spelled in English W-E-G, meaning to be strong or lively. And this word gives us words like vigorous and vigil. Bivouac comes from that. The word watch comes from that. And the word witch also comes from this root, because it comes from a Germanic word, for necromancer, i.e. someone who wakes or enlivens the dead. So that's kind of cool. In the earliest forms, it also did mean just things vegetable, so living and growing as a plant. It wasn't until the 1800s, mid-1800s, that it started to be used as kind of an adjective describing something that had a monotonous or kind of otherwise sedentary life. And it, as a noun, it wasn't used to describe a boring or dull person until, I think it was 1921, 20th century anyway. And that's where a bunch of the other, and eventually the idea of vegetable being like a slang word for a person who has basically brain dead, has lost all their functions and stuff. That's not until the 70s. But yeah, earliest was just the power of growth and being like unto a vegetable or plant in that way. Pivoting a little bit, the next word is sausage, because I can't stay away from delicious meats for too long, I guess. This one's pretty straightforward, but I thought it was kind of cool, because working backwards from the word sausage, the way we normally do when we're doing these little etymological, archaeological digs, it comes from French and from Old North French, and then from the Latin word salsica, which just means salted. So ultimately the key root component of sausage is salt at the foundation, which, like so many other things, it all comes down to salt. Delicious, delicious salt. This kind of had a cascade effect when I read that about sausage, because I often say that, you hear the phrase variety is the spice of life, and I'll often add, next to maybe salt. Of course, salt isn't a spice, but then I went, wait, why isn't salt a spice? What is a spice then exactly? Because I know it's not a spice, but I don't know. So I looked it up. Spice turns out has to be vegetation, right? So it all ties back together. But spice as a word, as far as etymology goes, is completely baffling to me. Someone out there is going to know more than, well, loads of people are going to know more than me about a lot of things, but about this in particular. And if you do, please let me know, because I need an adult here. But it comes to English through French. But the Latin word that comes before the French is just the word species, as in zoological or biological classification, taxonomic term, species. And I don't know why or how that would have happened. There's a couple of citations in the OED from the 1600s where species means the different groups or individual ingredients that go into a perfume or a medicinal concoction or something like that. And so at first blush, it's much later. The word spice is in English in like the 1200s. So the 1600s is too late for that to be an explanation. But the 1600 works are translations of Pliny. So they're translations of classical Roman stuff. So if the word species had that meaning in Rome, then they'd have these quotes that are talking about the species that went into a dish, or the species that were added to this mixture to make it work. And then you can kind of see that maybe that would morph into the discrete types of ingredients, and one of those being spices, and maybe that's where it came from. But I don't know. But it was such a weird thing to look at that, and I couldn't really find any explanation for it. There doesn't seem to be a lot of controversy or disagreement about that being where it was from. But if you know more than me about this word, do tell, because I'm very curious. And because I wanted to call this episode, take a sort of grab bag approach, I thought I might as well look up the words grab and bag, just because then I could keep the episode titles the way we've always been doing them. So starting with grab, one of the things that I love about etymology is obviously the charting, kind of the twisting, turning history of a word's various meanings and senses over the centuries. Like when you get one that really goes through a bunch of shifts. And I'm thinking like the word nice always comes up to me for that, because it's just meant so many different things over the centuries. But another thing that I kind of really like is when you run into a word that just has not changed, possibly ever. One of the best things I read on Twitter recently is someone referred to words as just organized noise and structured noises, which I love, because that's basically all they are, right? They're noises that we all agree mean something. And this is a word that really highlights that, because it comes through the Germanic side of the family, and ultimately from a PIE root that basically looks like it was probably pronounced very similar to the word grab. It's transliterated as Grebh. Greb, maybe? I don't know. But the fact that it is so similar, even in the PIE root, and the PIE root just means to seize or to reach. So forever ago, somebody made a noise to refer to that action of taking something in your hand by reaching out your arm and closing your hand around it. And that noise just kind of stuck through generations and all these different language changes and transmissions from one language to another and passing it down through the centuries and millennia and stuff. And it just kind of hung on. And it's the same noise that we make when we are English speakers and we talk about that. But that's kind of cool. So grab, super old, always just meant grab, and always sounded like grab, which is even weirder. The word bag is kind of another mystery, and I sort of like it because it sort of has that same idea of just, you can kind of play around with why that noise was chosen. But there's an Old Norse word that I think is just baggy, but I'm terrible at pronouncing Scandinavian type words, as we found out when we did that crossover with, well, it was Talk the Talk then, now Because Language, when I tried to pronounce Hedvig's name, and it took a long time, and I was never very good at it ever. But that word baggy, B-A-G-G-I, in Old Norse, just it doesn't have any similar like relations or siblings in other Germanic languages. It's just kind of on its own. There's an old French word bag, B-A-G-U-E, a medieval Latin word baga, meaning a chest or a sack. But they're just these kind of, there's French here, there's Latin here, there's Old Norse here. It looks like English probably came from the Old Norse, but the OED basically says nobody really knows, A, where these things came from, and B, why they're just so relatively isolated. And it says that there's probably a folk etymology out there, which is why the OED took time to address this. But it says that the explanation that connects bag to early ancestors of words like belly or bellows, it says there's no evidence for that at all. So it just sort of dismisses it. There's another theory that posits a Celtic origin, and the OED says that's even less likely because the Gaelic word bag comes from the English, not the other way around. So this one, I kind of think of the word bag, if you think of it just as a noise, it has sort of it feels nice and open. Bag. Feels like you could stuff a bunch of other stuff inside that word. It reminds me of when the whale gets conjured up in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by the infinite improbability drive and just starts falling and has to come up with names for stuff. Looks and reads a big wide word. Ow, ground. And that's what I think of bag. Bag. Just big and open. Anyway, it's late and I've said that word enough, so that's bag. Don't know where it comes from. Another organized noise. So that brings me to the end of this short little whirlwind tour of a handful of various words that I thought were kind of interesting and neat, or at least had neat and interesting elements to them. But yeah, if you're still here, thanks for that. If you're not, I forgive you. We know how it is. But next time we will definitely be back, both Amy and I, and we will see you then.
And that's it for another episode of Lexitecture. To get in touch with us about something you heard this episode, you can email us at words@lexitecture.com. You can also follow along and talk to us at Lexitecture on Facebook and Twitter, and at Lexitecture Podcast on Instagram. For back episodes and the occasional blog post, visit us at Lexitecture.com. Thanks very much, and we'll talk to you again soon.